The 1st of September, 1939. Nazi Germany invades Poland, and the war in Europe begins. In the months that follow, German control expands rapidly, and with it comes a system of oppression that spreads across the occupied territories. Existing prisons quickly reach their limits, and the authorities begin to establish new concentration camps to contain the growing number of detainees. One of these camps is created in May 1940 near the Polish town of Auschwitz, in German Auschwitz. At first, it serves as a place for Polish political prisoners, but as the war continues and German power extends across Europe, its role begins to change. New sections and subcamps are built. Railway lines connect the site to distant regions of Europe, and transports arrive carrying people from across the continent. By 1942, Auschwitz-Birkenau becomes a central place in the German effort to destroy the Jews of Europe. Hundreds of thousands are brought there, and most are killed shortly after arrival. When Soviet soldiers enter the camp on the 27th of January 1945, they find only a small number of survivors, many of them ill, starving, and close to death. The central figure in the crimes committed at Auschwitz was its longest-serving commandant, who oversaw the camp's development and daily operation of mass murder. His name is Rudolf Höss. Rudolf Franz Ferdinand Höss was born on the 25th of November 1901 in the town of Baden-Baden, then part of the German Empire. He was raised in a strictly religious Catholic family, where discipline and obedience shaped everyday life and defined the structure of the household. His father, Franz Xaver Höss, had served as a soldier before becoming a merchant, and he imposed a rigid and controlled upbringing, expecting his son to follow a path into the priesthood. From an early age, Höss was taught to respect authority, to suppress personal doubt, and to follow orders without question, and this early conditioning left a deep and lasting mark on his character. Despite his father's wishes, however, he became increasingly drawn toward military life, influenced by stories of war and military service that surrounded him during his childhood. When the First World War broke out in 1914, he, according to his autobiography, left school while still very young and entered military service, stepping directly from adolescence into the violent reality of war. He later claimed that he fought in the Middle East alongside Ottoman forces, but in reality he cannot be found in any of the relevant military records and was registered in the Mannheim area throughout the war. He evidently made up or significantly altered his wartime activities in later years. Nevertheless, the experiences from the wartime era fundamentally shaped his life. After Germany's defeat in 1918, the country entered a period marked by deep instability, political violence, and economic collapse, where the authority of the state weakened and armed groups operated across both urban centers and border regions. In this atmosphere, Höss joined the Freikorps Rossbach, one of the paramilitary formations that fought against left-wing movements and took part in violent actions in regions such as Silesia and the Baltic area. These units operated in a world where legal structures were weak and violence became a tool of political expression, and within this environment, ideological enemies were no longer seen as opponents, but as targets to be eliminated. In 1923, the 21-year-old Höss participated in the murder of a local schoolteacher, Walter Kaddow, who was accused of betraying a nationalist activist, an act that demonstrated both his willingness to use violence and his loyalty to extremist ideas. For this crime, he was arrested and sentenced to 10 years in prison, although he served about 5 years before being released under an amnesty in 1928. His imprisonment did not lead to reflection or rejection of violence, but rather reinforced his worldview, becoming another stage in his development within a Nazi system where loyalty and harsh action were valued above moral consideration. In 1929, he married Hedwig Hensel, and together they had 5 children. By the early 1930s, Höss had become a committed supporter of Adolf Hitler and the Nazi movement, aligning himself with a political system that promised order, strength, and national revival after the defeat and years of instability. Although the exact date of his entry into the Nazi Party remains uncertain, there is no doubt that by the time Hitler came to power in January 1933, Höss was fully integrated into the ideological framework of Nazism. In 1934, he joined the SS, the Schutzstaffel, an elite organization that served as a central instrument of repression and security within the Nazi state, and later became responsible for the organization of mass murder. His early service took place in Dachau concentration camp near Munich, which functioned as the model for the entire concentration camp system, and as a place where methods of control, punishment, and psychological domination were developed and refined. There, Höss learned how prisoners were reduced to obedience through a combination of strict organization, forced labor, systematic punishment, and constant fear. And this environment became a formative experience that shaped his understanding of how a system of terror could operate efficiently and continuously. In 1938, Höss transferred to Sachsenhausen concentration camp near Berlin, where he served as adjutant to the Commandant and later took on more direct responsibilities, including the supervision of executions and the management of daily camp operations. During this period, he gained the trust and recognition of his superiors, not because of overt cruelty or visible sadism, but because of his reliability and administrative precision. He followed orders without hesitation and demonstrated an ability to translate instructions into organized practice, which made him particularly valuable within the SS hierarchy. At a time when the concentration camp system was expanding alongside the growing power of Nazi Germany, such qualities were highly valued, and Höss emerged as a figure capable of managing complex structures of control with efficiency and consistency. The Second World War started on the 1st of September 1939, when Nazi Germany invaded Poland, and as German control expanded across Europe, the function and importance of concentration camps changed significantly. In 1940, the SS leadership selected Höss to take command of a new camp in occupied Poland, and in May of that year, he arrived at Auschwitz. Initially, the camp functioned as a place for political prisoners and forced laborers, where conditions were already harsh, and many prisoners died from exhaustion, disease, and mistreatment. However, the camp's location, connected to major railway lines and situated in a relatively isolated area, made it particularly suitable for expansion, and it soon became clear that its role would grow far beyond that of a standard concentration camp. In 1941, the Nazi regime moved from persecution to the systematic extermination of European Jews, and Auschwitz became central to this policy. Höss was given responsibility for expanding the camp and increasing its capacity for killing, a task that required both organizational skill and complete commitment to the goals of the Nazi regime. The construction of Auschwitz-Birkenau began, creating a vast complex equipped with gas chambers and crematoria designed specifically for mass murder. Under Höss's supervision, a system was developed that combined deception, organization, and speed, where victims arriving by train were told they would undergo disinfection, then led into gas chambers where Zyklon B was released, killing them within minutes, after which their bodies were removed and burned in crematoria. This process was repeated continuously, transforming the camp into a highly organized system of industrialized killing and mass murder. During 1942 and 1943, transports arrived from across German-occupied Europe, bringing Jews from Poland, France, the Netherlands, Slovakia, Greece, and other regions. Most of the people were murdered shortly after arrival, while others were selected for forced labor under conditions that often led to death within a short time. In addition to Jews, the victims included Poles, Romani people, Soviet prisoners of war, and other groups targeted by Nazi racial policy. Höss oversaw this system as an administrator, organizing transport schedules, managing supplies, and ensuring that the entire process functioned without interruption. In his later statements, he claimed that he acted out of duty and without personal hatred, presenting himself as a man who simply followed orders, yet his role was central in transforming Auschwitz into one of the most efficient killing centers in history. In November 1943, Höss was transferred to Berlin to work in the SS administrative offices responsible for all concentration and extermination camps, where he helped coordinate the wider system across occupied Europe. However, in May 1944, he returned to Auschwitz to oversee the so-called Hungarian Action, during which 420,000 Hungarian Jews were deported to Auschwitz-Birkenau within a period of 8 weeks, and around 330,000 were murdered shortly after arrival. This period marked one of the most intense phases of killing in the camp's history, once again carried out under Höss's supervision, with careful organization and efficiency. By early 1945, the war had turned decisively against Germany, and as the Red Army advanced from the east, the SS began evacuating Auschwitz, forcing tens of thousands of prisoners on long death marches under harsh winter conditions, during which many died. At this time, as the Nazi regime itself was collapsing, Höss was serving at Ravensbrück concentration camp in northern Germany, where he continued to oversee operations connected to the camp system. After the construction of the gas chamber there, he coordinated the operations of killing by gassing in camp, which was created exclusively for female prisoners. After the war, Höss attempted to avoid responsibility by fleeing and adopting a false identity under the name Franz Lang, presenting himself as a naval officer, and for several months he lived quietly on a farm in northern Germany without being detected. However, in March 1946, British investigators located him after pressuring his family, leading to his arrest on the 11th of March 1946. During interrogations, he provided detailed accounts of the operation of Auschwitz, and later appeared as a witness at the Nuremberg trials, where leading figures of the Nazi regime were prosecuted. His calm and factual descriptions of mass killing shocked many observers. In May 1946, Höss was extradited to Poland, where in March 1947 he stood trial before the Supreme National Tribunal in Warsaw. During the proceedings, he acknowledged his role, but continued to claim that he had acted under orders, presenting himself as a man bound by duty. The court rejected his defense, and on the 2nd of April, 1947, sentenced him to death. A few days before his execution, he asked the Poles for forgiveness for his crimes. On the 16th of April, 1947, the 45-year-old Rudolf Höss was executed by hanging in Auschwitz, the camp he had once commanded, in the presence of a crowd of 100 people that included former prisoners. His corpse was cremated, and the ashes scattered in a nearby river.
Thanks for watching the World History Channel. Be sure to like and subscribe, and click the bell notification icon so you don't miss our next episodes. We thank you, and we'll see you next time on the channel.